Hey, what's up everyone? This is Isaiah for Therapy Today. And as we enter into Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to just start off with the absolute basics for people who are just being introduced to the idea of what mental health is, and to people who have been dealing with mental health struggles or have been in the mental health field for a long time. Let's talk about the question today: what is mental health? So as we get started talking about mental health today, I wanted to start with the World Health Organization's definition of what mental health is. Mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables us to cope with stresses of life, realize our abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to our community. So that's a handful, but it does get at a sense of how encompassing our mental health is. It's not relegated to just one part of our lives, but really affects everything that we do from birth all the way to death. So let's break that down a little bit. What are we talking about when we talk about that phrase, mental well-being? Well, the first misconception that I want to address is that mental health is not just brain health. Our brains and our psychology are really closely connected, but they are not always the exact same thing. So they are connected in the sense that a lot of the functions of our mental health are housed in the brain, so that if you change the brain in some way, that somebody's psychology will also change. This was a case in point with the story of Phineas Gage. He was a foreman who was helping to construct railroads. And during an accident during that construction, he had an iron rod driven through his brain. And he didn't even realize that it had happened. But what happened later on was that the damage to his brain resulted in a change in his behavior and his personality. And that was really a seminal piece of research for psychology, to know that changes in our brain affect our behavior. But it does go beyond just what's going on physically in our brains. So let's talk about the word psychology, where a lot of mental health grows from. The Greek stem for psyche doesn't just refer to our brains, but actually talks more about our soul, our mind, our sense of self. So it's not just whether our brains are healthy, but also encompasses a collection of our identity, our beliefs, our emotions, our reactions to things that we can't just map out on the brain. So that's an idea of just how encompassing our mental well-being can be. It really hits on every part of our lives. And so let's talk about mental illness. What does that mean when we talk about somebody being mentally unwell? And so when we talk about mental illness or someone being mentally unwell, it means that those areas that were talked about in the World Health Organization's definition have been disrupted. When we talk about someone being unable to cope with the stresses of life, when they're not realizing their abilities, when they're not learning and working well, and they cannot contribute or even be a part of a community, those are signs that somebody's mental health is being compromised in some way. And when we talked about that distinction between the brain and the mind, it's not just necessarily that there's something wrong or unhealthy with their brain. Certainly that can be the case, and there are some mental health disorders that can be mapped out and we can actually track that when we do brain scans. But that also encompasses patterns of our behaviors and our emotions that may not show up when we just look at somebody's brain. So some examples of that could be a child who is really sensitive to light, sound, and interactions, and so they have a lot of trouble functioning in a loud classroom with teachers giving instructions and other kids playing and messing around with harsh lights and loud sounds all around them. It can also look like a mom who has terrible anxiety and lots of feelings of guilt and feeling really terrible about herself and her body image after having a baby. And it can also be a soldier who is angry, who feels guilty, and who has constant nightmares after being in battle. These are all pictures of ways that when our mental health is compromised, that can affect the entirety of our lives. So another misconception that I want to hit when we're talking about mental illness is that mental and physical health are not as separate as we like them to be. We do go to specific mental health professionals and we go to physical health professionals. But our mental health affects our bodies and our bodies affect our mental health. A lot of the symptoms related to our mental health is not just about how we feel emotionally, but also how we feel physically. Mental illness can affect our sleep, our appetite. Some people get migraines. Some people have physical responses like panic attacks to our emotional content. And so what should we do when we feel like some of these activities that we talked about in the World Health Organization definition have been disrupted? We can see a psychologist, we can see a social worker, we can see a counselor. These are people who can help us talk through some of these issues, help us find problematic patterns and start changing those patterns so that our mental health can improve along the way. They can help us build connections, practice new behaviors, and those are all ways that can change our mental health for the better. In some cases, we might see a psychiatrist as well, somebody who can prescribe medication that can help with the brain chemistry or help our brains or our bodies to function the way they need to, for instance, in a school environment or in a work environment. So then let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum. We were just talking about mental illness. Let's talk about mental wellness and what that looks like. I just said that we could talk to a psychologist, a social worker, or a counselor about when we are feeling mentally unwell. But we can also see these people when we're feeling okay and want things to be even better. There are people who go through premarital counseling, who go through couples therapy, or people who just explore things about their personalities and their attributes as they're looking for jobs or preparing for a transition in life. So just like in physical fitness, mental wellness looks different for everybody. There's not just an objective standard where I can measure somebody and say, oh, okay, you are mentally fit, because that's going to be different for every person. So for example, for people who play different sports, fitness is going to look different for a baseball player, a runner, or a football player. Those are all different, and mental health is the same way. Being mentally well is going to look different depending on what you need in your situation. Being mentally well as a college student is going to be different from being mentally well as a 7-year-old versus being a parent. So like I said, we don't have to be mentally unwell to go see somebody. There are plenty of ways that counseling and therapy can be helpful even before something goes wrong. So mental wellness is not just an absence of mental illness, but similarly, we also don't have to see someone to improve our mental wellness. There are plenty of things that we can do with ourselves or with our communities around us that can help us improve our mental health. And a lot of those things are when we can practice things that allow us to be okay with ourselves. And sometimes that'll mean time outside, time spent away from our phones, time spent with friends, participating in sports or hobbies, things that give us enjoyment and a sense of being okay with ourselves, as well as the feelings and patterns that we're used to. And that gives us an opportunity to be okay with ourselves and our feelings, even the parts of ourselves and the feelings that we might find uncomfortable or undesirable sometimes. Mental wellness also shows up in our connections with other people. That was the last part of that definition from the World Health Organization. Being in relationships with parents, with siblings, friends, teachers, co-workers, our communities, our faith. Those can all be disrupted when we're feeling mentally unwell. But the great thing about it is that as we lean into those relationships, as we're able to be real with people like our parents or our friends or our faith communities, those tend to improve our mental health, which in turn also improve our relationships with those people. So that's a really powerful cycle that we can lean into when we want to grow or when things are not going as well as we would like. And that's something that's really important too. Community is so vital for our mental health. We humans are social beings, no matter how introverted you think you might be. And so community, people around us, people that we can be real with, are vital to our growth, being able to have accountability, being able to get feedback from people, as well as the support and a safe place to be able to grow, to make mistakes, and have people pick you up when things are not working for you. And so I think that's a big takeaway when it comes to mental wellness, whether it's in activities that you do yourself or time that you spend with community. It's about being real with yourself or with other people. And that can be really challenging sometimes, because sometimes we have to realize that we have some really uncomfortable feelings that we have to be real about. And there are some really uncomfortable thoughts and behavior patterns that we have to be real about, or else they will never change. So that's one thing, be real in relationships. And the other thing is to care about other people around you. Check in with them, ask how they're really doing. And that's part of what Mental Health Awareness Month is about, to realize that everyone's got stuff that they're going through, and us being real with each other, caring and asking about how someone else is doing can make a huge difference. It's good for them and good for you. Hey everyone, thanks so much for checking out this video. This is a super important topic, just as we're talking about mental health a lot this month, but of course on this channel in general. So please like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content, stay up to date with everything that we're doing as a channel. And again, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you all next time.